Hi, welcome to Platonics. I'm Jords.
I'm Rocky, and wait, haven't we done this before?
Hi, welcome to Platonics. I'm Jords.
I'm Rocky, and this is the show where we pull things apart, specifically TV
Wait,
shows, movies.
is this familiar to you?
Yeah, I feel like we have
Hi,
done this.
welcome to Platonics. I'm Jords,
I'm Rocky.
and this is the part where
We've
you
definitely
say
been here before. For realsies this time, though. This is Platonics. It's a show where we turn bits of media into role-playing game sessions. And this week, as you may have guessed from our, absolute props for rolling with that one, impromptu skit, this episode we are going to talk about time loops and how you run a role-playing game, a tabletop RPG, that is centered on a time loop. I'm excited.
I'm pretty keen for this one. I think time loops are one of those great problems to work through where they're so ubiquitous. You see them in all sorts of fiction, in all sorts of genres, but translating into a role-playing game is there are pitfalls and there are ways to succeed, and I don't think it's immediately obvious. Good grist for our mill.
Yeah. Our mill needs some good gristing.
Mm.
So shall we start this one with a little bit of a book club? Because I am keen to talk about the stuff that I watched for this. I watched Edge of Tomorrow on Jordan's recommendation. And I also watched Palm Springs on my brother-in-law's recommendation.
I haven't seen Palm Springs.
Oh, absolutely go watch it. I mean, too late for the episode, but absolutely go watch it.
Maybe on the next iteration of the time loop that we record this episode, I'll have seen it.
Next time we record this episode, you should watch Palm Springs. No, it was very approachable, much more approachable for watching with my wife than Edge of Tomorrow, which I watched alone after she'd gone to bed. So, yeah, Palm Springs is Jake Peralta gets stuck with...
Do you mean Andy Samberg or Jake Peralta?
Yeah, Andy Samberg. Andy Samberg gets... The rest of the bit was he gets trapped with the person I'm pretty sure is the mother from How I Met Your Mother in a time loop. And because it's, 30, 40 years post Groundhog Day, which is obviously the seminal classic of the genre, which we will come back to, I'm sure. Because it's decades post Groundhog Day and the trope is well embedded by this point, they get to skip past all of the learning we're in a time loop. And the mother from How I Met Your Mother, whose character, Sarah, I think her name is. So Sarah runs into Andy Samberg's character 10,000 loops in and then joins the time loop. And the film really gets to do this fun thing where it takes for granted that we know how a time loop works. And so it gets to go so much further into the philosophy and the psychology and how the texture of the thing changes if you're not the only one experiencing it, which I think actually is worth watching if you want to run one of these with a group of people. I think it's a spiritual sequel to Groundhog Day in that it takes all of those concepts as given and really pushes them into something that is still interesting for an audience who is across the trope. So I really enjoyed Palm Springs.
It's like the difference between watching every superhero origin story movie and being come on, I'm so familiar with this genre. Give me something new and interesting.
Edge of Tomorrow was the other one that I watched, and that was just very silly. I think the highlight of that movie was Tom Cruise getting shot in the head a lot of times.
And just that little bit of Schadenfreude pleasure where at the start of the loop, it's him bumping into somebody and getting talked down to. And that's just great.
I was expecting that one to be quite serious, and I think it ended up having a lot more levity than I expected, which was nice. Not a bad movie. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it came out at a time when I worked in a video store.
Oh my god, did you have to watch the time loop movie on loop?
Yeah, at 11:55 p.m. in the liminal space of the video store before it closes down. Yeah.
Those were mine. I also had on my watch list, but did not re-watch, but have in my mind season 4, episode 6 of Stargate SG-1, Window of
Also
Opportunity.
on my list. Yep.
Yeah, good. Then I'm sure we will talk about that too. There's also a Star Trek episode that is like a very highly regarded as a time loop ep called Cause and Effect. It's season 5, episode 18 of The Next Generation. But I didn't bother because there's just no way that you will be interested in watching that or across the tropes of Star Trek enough to understand.
I'm sorry, guys.
Why it's fun.
It's just too big of a body of media to start attacking at this point in my life. Yeah, I got a couple of other things on mine. Russian Doll,
I haven't seen.
which I think was Netflix. I
Okay.
saw it a couple of years ago now. It's got Natasha Lyonne in it. But that's a darker contemporary take on the time loop, where it's just very modern day. Run Lola Run. Deep throwback to late
yes.
90s German film.
Yeah. I studied this in film class.
Oh, you big nerd. I
Yeah.
studied time in physics class. And I've got a video game as well. There's one that I haven't played on here, but it's called Deathloop, which is built around this premise. But one that I have played and I think is an excellent example of it is Outer Wilds, which is a non-combat game, full exploration based, but you are stuck in a time-based loop.
Oh my gosh.
Great game.
How have you come up with two things that are very close to my heart that I have like never thought of in my list of media? Yeah. God, I love Outer Wilds.
Exquisite game. If you haven't played Outer Wilds and you like exploration games, highly recommend it. Absolutely slaps. I wish I could erase my memory so I could play it again.
I feel like we probably can talk about time loops without spoiling Outer Wilds, but you should absolutely
I don't think
go
we go
and-
into any of the content about that because it's just too good of a game to spoil.
We have now spoiled that it contains a time loop, but in the interests of preserving that experience for you, I'm not going to mention too much more about it because it's maybe one of the top 10 experiences of my life. I cried when I finished it.
It's very much a games are art. Like, this is a fantastic example of it. Anyway, this is not about Outer Wilds. This is about time loops.
It is not. Time loops.
And I've also got something else on the video game spectrum that I think if you squint, you could see the structures of a time loop in here. And that's the Souls-like type games.
Okay.
Games where death is part of the loop
Yeah.
and the world is relatively static, which means that the player becomes a master of the world piece by piece, constantly dying, popping back, trying again, doing that. I think you could see that structure in there, but I don't think they classically count as one.
I don't think it's canon because I don't feel like you looping through time is part of the narrative. It's just a game mechanic.
Yes.
But
And I think this is where we should start drilling down and start teasing out, like, what are the things that are critically important for this to be considered time loop?
let's go.
I think for a time loop to be a time loop, there has to be something outside of the protagonist's control that is forcing them back to a specific starting point in time. There is an initial frame that is extremely hard, it is strong, and it anchors the entire rest of the story.
Yeah, it is the I got you, babe, waking up in the motel. There is a moment that you go back to no matter what.
So we got a hard opening frame.
But I think also the important thing that you mentioned there is that we don't have a choice about when and how we time travel.
Yeah.
Right?
Which means, like, the corollary there is a finish point, a defined finish point in the loop that you don't get to control.
Yes. So these take a couple of forms in the stuff that I've watched. So I think in Groundhog Day, it is like when it hits midnight or like sunrise the next day, it resets no matter what. If he dies, it resets. And then another one that has come up a few times across things is if you fall asleep, it resets.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can't just force, like,
exactly
nap in the day and then pop out.
There's again, a really good bit in Palm Springs where Andy Samberg is like, yeah, one time I took a bunch of meth and I got as far as Guatemala and then they arrested me in the airport. And then the loop reset and he went back, but that's I think that's all part of the constraints that are keeping you to a specific location as well, right? Like you're not just waking up at the same time over and over again. You're also waking up in the same place. It's a complete reset. You go back to where you were at that time in that body. And I think the addition of falling asleep to those sort of classic reset triggers really puts a fun, like, temporal boundary around how far outside your zone of interest you can get, even if you have a time loop, which, like in Palm Springs, doesn't necessarily have a hard reset point. They can go as far as they want into that like timeline, but as soon as they fall asleep, they wake up again back in Palm Springs. So maybe you can make it 48 hours without sleep, but like you're gonna fall asleep eventually. And that's always going to reset you.
There's another one that you've triggered here. There's an episode of Adventure Time where Finn goes into the Hall of Egress without Jake and ends up like going through it, navigating it. But every time he opens his eyes outside the Hall of Egress, he appears back in the Hall of Egress at that time, at that place. And we see like the montage of this happening where he goes years with his eyes closed, but eventually Jake gets bored and like opens his eyes for him, and then he appears straight back. And of course, Jake has no memory of this because he's outside the loop, so it happens many times. Yeah, there's like a hard limit on what can and can't be done there.
So we are going back without consent to a time and a place over and over again. There is one way that you can be under control, and it is to kill yourself.
Oh yeah, die earlier.
Die earlier. So I think that's also really interesting because you know you're going to come back, right? Like you functionally can't die. Functionally, nothing has consequences. Again, in a fun example of like actually digging into the genre, in Palm Springs, they're like, oh, you can feel pain. And like, it turns out the worst death is dying slowly in the emergency room rather than quickly. Like the worst loops are the ones where I get rescued jumping in front of a truck. Like,
ooh, yeah.
Like there's one genuine nightmare fuel moment where I was like, yeah, I got hit by a car and like it pulverized the lower part of my body, and they wouldn't let me fall asleep because they were afraid I would lapse into a coma. So they kept me awake for like a week.
Oh, I don't need to imagine that.
Yeah. So yes, there is one bit that's under your control, and it is that hard reset button, and that kind of ties into another part of it, which is that any changes you make to the world, including yourself, including your own body and aliveness, are all reset, except for your memory.
Yep. Your mental state persists, but your physical state is reset, which is like one thing that I have a little problem with in Groundhog Day, where he becomes a master pianist. And I'm like, man, your body would not have that muscle memory. You haven't established those neurons. But that's getting in the weeds.
Yeah, I mean, it does open some like interesting cans of worms about like, how do we think memories are encoded in the brain if it's not physical? Because if there's no physical changes that persist between loops, like, how are the memories getting back?
I can actually answer that one pretty definitively. Magic.
Yeah. I think one interesting counterexample to this, which is unfortunately the thing that you have not and will not seen, is the Star Trek episode where they are initially not aware of the loop and they become aware of it slowly over time as a like sense of deja vu, and then a hunch that something is wrong, and then eventually they figure it out slowly. But they're initially unaware of it, and it memory doesn't like fully persist between loops, at least to start with, which I think was a super interesting approach to it, because then you have characters at varying stages of awareness of the loop.
Something that I think is important worth mentioning as well is for our time loops to be punchy, they can't go too long. Like the falling asleep deadline is a really easy one to just be like, well, that bounds us to like a day, a couple of days. But like there are some closed time like loops in other fiction, especially like Stephen Baxter is full of closed time like loops where they might be like millennia long. There's even one alien race that goes back in time at the end of the universe to engineer their own creation. But we can't play that out at the table.
Mm.
That is beyond the scope of what is fun.
I think you can probably canonically sort of say that it is a day.
Yep.
Approximately. It is approximately a day.
That's the fun boundary line. Yeah.
Exactly. It is a, there's no like physics reason for it to be a day in most cases, but like that is about as much stuff as we can kind of keep track of.
It matches
as
to a
people.
natural storytelling frame as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what else we got?
So the way that I tend to categorize how characters behave when they're in a time loop is we do have that initial learning phase that's really divergent. That's them like A, becoming aware of it. Okay, great. That's boring. We've experienced that. Then it's B, finding what they're allowed to do and how far away they can get. It's really open. It's really explorative. And then when we're working our way towards resolving the loop, which I don't think Groundhog Day does a good job of this, right? Groundhog Day just stops when Bill Murray has, like, the universe has decided that he's no longer an asshole. But we don't have anything, like, he can't work towards anything. He just decides to stop being a prick to everyone that he meets.
Yeah.
But other examples in media have, like, a defined condition to break the loop. So the initial part of our loop is very explorative. And then once people have kind of got the facts of the understanding down pat, that's when it switches to a convergent phase. And they're working towards something and they're planning for things. And they're now looping with intention as opposed to just seeing what's happening outside or who they could talk to or what wild actions they can take.
Yeah.
So I think at a macro structure, that's kind of what I want it to look like. Something that's quite sandboxy, but with definitive goals that can be discovered and then manipulated.
Yeah, so I think you've touched on a couple of interesting things there. One is that, firstly, your goal is to get out of the loop.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Palm Springs plays with this because Andy Samberg does not want to get out of the loop, at least to begin with. And that changes over the course of the film. He's initially quite happy living every day over and over again at this resort. Yeah, firstly, your goal is to get out of the loop. Secondly, the way that you get out of the loop is using the only thing that you do have, which is memory, right? Like the way that you solve this problem is by learning. So I think you can say that pretty broadly about all time loop stories, is that the goal of the story is to escape the loop, and the way that the characters escape the loop is by figuring something out, by learning something. And then maybe they act on it, but like the only thing they can take between loops with them is information in their own heads, even is experience, is memory. And so that is where the solution has to come from. So we have an escape that is powered by learning. That is what all of these stories fundamentally have to be because of the constraints of the setup. Yeah, that can be like a practical learning. It can be in a lot of the sci-fi shows. It's about like we figure out what the phenomenon is. And in a lot of the movies, I think because they tend to be more standalone, they don't have to fit into a broader canon. They tend to be more like your Bill Murray type, Groundhog Day type. You can learn something about yourself or about what it is to be a person. There can be moral learning there too, and then the loop will just let you out.
Yeah, in that case, the universe is the thing that's binding you here.
In every case, we are trying to learn something. And so without wanting to make it glib, I think you can summarize every time loop story as fuck around and find out.
Yeah, you really can. And like the reason we love time loops in all the different shows and such that we watch is because you've spent all these seasons becoming attached to these characters, and then you get to see how they would act if there were no breaks, if there were no
and no
rules.
Consequences. Yeah.
Like how far would they go? Like the Stargate episode, there are some core memories that are locked in there. One of them is Jack and Teok
playing golf through the gate.
Stargate.
Yeah. Like,
No, it's so silly. It's so frivolous. You couldn't do that on a regular day.
yeah, the point is, it's kind of not about, at some points, it's not about the action necessarily. It is a chance for the characters to get a little bit disinhibited, and do some fun, like, character work.
Something you've idly thought about, and now that there's no consequences, that's the time to try. So we've got fuck around and find out is our primary mode of play here.
Right, so, like, going from the top down, I guess at the bottom level we have our individual loops, and at the very top level we have, like, the goal is to escape from the loop by learning. But I think what you were starting on before was something quite interesting, which is that within, like, underneath that plot, but above the pattern of individual loops, the characters tend to go through a bit of a, like, journey, which, as you said, starts with figuring out that they're in a loop, and then tends to go that there's a couple of stages that tend to happen. So you said one of them was, like, they mess around a lot and see what the limits are, right? There's a lot of messing around.
Open, yep.
I think another one is the, like, dead set on trying to force an escape without actually learning anything phase.
Just like brute force. Try things.
So it's like, I'm no longer just trying things for fun. I'm trying things to try and get out, but I'm trying them in a way that is not, like, stepping back and actually, retaining anything and learning anything between loops. I'm just frantically trying to escape, like trapped in a glass case of emotion type. Let me out, let me out, let me out. I think another one is despair. So there is
always happens.
A phase of, like, despair, nihilism, nothing matters. And I think the other one is a, like, again, a little bit more in your Groundhog Days and your Palm Springs than necessarily in your episodic sci-fi shows, but there is a, like, acceptance and acknowledging that, like, well, yes, every day in the loop is pointless because there's no consequences, but also isn't, like, life pointless because, and we have to choose to have meaning and blah, 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 blah. Like, that kind of acceptance, catharsis. It's like almost but not quite the stages of grief. Like, we've almost but not quite got, like, denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. And like the stages of grief, I don't think they have to happen in that order. I think you can have your, like, happy-go-lucky screwing around phase after your despair phase or before your despair phase. Like, they're not always going to happen for the characters in the same order.
It depends on the particular piece of fiction.
Yeah.
And there's one that, like you brought up with the Palm Springs example, there's one extra stage that is in some subcategories, which is the protagonist becomes aware of somebody else who is stuck in the loop and is aware of it. So again, not present in all of them, but that is something that I think we can put in our back pocket as a good kick for our players for later. Having the awareness that somebody else is stuck in it kind of breaks the magic circle a little bit and forces characters towards...
What's the philosophical word? Like, the solipsism of it.
Yes,
right? It's like,
exactly.
all there is me in my own head, and can I say if any of this is real? And as soon as there is another person who knows what's going on...
It spurs action.
It's like, oh, okay, this is real. And suddenly, because someone else remembers, we start to have consequences leeching back in. Again, another thing that Palm Springs does so well. We should just call the episode Palm Springs. But, like, as soon as Niles brings Sarah into the loop... Niles is Andy Samberg's character.
You mean Jake Peralta?
As soon as Jake Peralta brings How I Met Your Mother into the loop, suddenly he starts caring about consequences again because there is someone else to remember them. And they have some really interesting conversations about that. He's like, we can't just be psychopaths in here because we still have to live with what we did, even if they don't. Like, genuinely some, like, quite interesting philosophical stuff.
All right, I'm going to watch this movie. All right, shut up. Come on.
If The Lonely Island would like to spawn this episode, please get in touch.
All right, so we've got this overarching big kind of format of what we expect the players to go through. There's some sort of exploratory phase, maybe a bit of despair, lots of fucking around and finding out, and eventually some sort of a spur towards breaking the loop, the ultimate goal of it.
Mm-hmm.
How does that look? Like if we wanted to point a camera at this, what does that actually look like? Zooming down from high structure play into like moment to moments at the table, what are the characters doing in the loop?
The same thing over and over again.
All right, I'll take this one, Jords. Thanks. They're talking to people. They're going out and trying actions. They're finding locations. And they're doing it all like on a timeline. One thing that I think is very important to remember here is that you need to have some way of tracking time for a time loop to matter. There's only a certain amount that you can get done. Like there is an opportunity cost to this. So at the start, when you're in that very open exploration phase, it might be going out and talking to different people and getting their understanding of what's happening. But you're not going to talk to the same person every single time at the beginning. You're going to try other things. And all of those other things that you could be prepped, that could be actionable, are stuck in their own routines, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that you can take for granted in the time loop is when you walk out, that at 9 o'clock, you can find these characters in these locations, or this event about to occur up the street.
There will be scenarios where that gets disrupted as part of play, where, you know, Bill Murray just decides not to go to work. And so, you know, the whole bit with the groundhog doesn't happen that day, right? Where Niles and Sarah get in the car and try to drive back to Texas. And so they miss the wedding. And so none of those scripted events happen. But
but only for that loop, right?
Exactly.
The rest of the loops still go on rails.
So because we are confined also to a place, there is kind of a natural gravity back to the place and the events that are happening. So like most of the time, most of the play will be interacting with this sequence of events. I think we can say that. And a deviation from that is exactly that. It's a deviation. And the next loop will be back to the sequence of events that's playing out in this place at this time.
So we've got a bunch of micro loops that are occurring that have some points where they might cross over, but otherwise are independent of each other. So you can say like the players go this way or the characters go this way and interact with one of the loops, and they break some of the things that would happen. They change its causal pathway. But when they go to another location, that might still be unaffected and everything is still operating in exactly the same fashion over there, just at a later point in the day.
Yeah, they're almost kind of a little bit insulated from each other, right? Like there's a
insulated is exactly the right word. Yeah.
It's the opposite of a butterfly effect, like a moth effect. I don't know. It's
the opposite of a butterfly is not a moth. I think
a caterpillar effect.
No, it's still not an opposite. It's a precursor.
What is? Whatever.
This is a big question.
I'll let you think about
that. Let us know your thoughts. Tell us what the opposite of a butterfly is, and give us whatever classification system you're using to frame that answer.
Oh boy. It's the opposite of a butterfly effect in that like changes actually don't propagate as much as you would expect, right? There is no chaos theory of like, well, if you walk out the door slightly differently, the whole day unfolds differently, because even though that might be correct from a physics point of view, I guess, it's no fun. Is really what it boils down to. So like, yeah, events are quite isolated from each other.
One of the points of time looping your characters is that they can gain mastery over the world. And if the butterfly effect happens and that chaos propagates dramatically over such a short time span, it means they can't then master the world. They can't do the thing of like showing up at exactly the right time in exactly the right place to do like stop the person from walking in front of the bus every single day, because they took 4 extra steps to get to the location 1 step beforehand, and that meant that the timing was off. We don't care about that, right? The macro structure is what matters here, in that you can have a schedule for all the different micro loops that are going on, and the bits at which they would interfere with each other are what are important, but by and large, they're insulated.
I think there's an instinct to put it on a timeline. I look, maybe that's a good start as a planning tool, but the way I would be thinking about this is as scenes. So I think this is, for me, a scene-based sort of playthrough, and we have the same scenes come up each time, and the scenes at least start the same way with the same sort of set of initial conditions, and then stuff can feed out of those scenes into future scenes and maybe affect them. But like, we have these scenes, and each scene sort of starts the same way, because that's very much how the media is structured, right? Like, each scene, so that we as the audience know which scene we're in, they all start the same way, right? They start with, obviously, the very first one, we start with the same musical cue each time, but like, the events that anchor each thing start the same each time, and then may or may not be changed. But I think thinking about things as situations, right? In our classic prep situations, not plots.
Oh,
It's like, here are a bunch of things that are set up and will go into motion, and that setup is always the same.
yep. I think that's very much the point. Like, I would still frame this around a timeline. And like, it is a timeline of scenes, but I would have it so that I know at this point in the day, these are the scenes that would be occurring, and our players would go to one of them.
Yeah. And I think it is that. I think it's about like, don't try and keep track of every single event that happens on a timeline. You have to chunk them out like a director would into scenes. And we have some scenes, I'll come back to how many, because I think that's a bigger conversation, but we have some scenes that are available to choose from. And those scenes are like almost like pre-packaged scenarios. It's like, okay, I'm choosing to interact with this scene now, which does rule out interacting with the other scenes that are happening at the same time. And we're going to see how this sort of plays through. So it is about kind of like packaging up those events so that they not only are manageable for you as the game master, but also recognizable for the players, right? It's the DJ scene, because that's the one where you start with like talking about what the DJ is playing, what everyone's doing. It's hard to talk about those points in the story unless you give them quite discrete sort of identifying features.
There has to be something to anchor you to the start of,
Yeah.
this is the bit in the storyline that we're experiencing.
Yeah. So it can't be, yeah. I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, it can't be loosey-goosey and you're just doing whatever you want on the timeline. I think we are playing through something that looks a bit like a tree structure, right? With dare I call them nodes joined up throughout the course of your nominally day. And we're dealing with something that is discrete rather than continuous.
I think if you are the player on this side of the fence, if you don't have the full picture, I think you can get really frustrated in here. And what we don't want to replicate is that full stages of grief kind of parallel in our players, right? We don't want our players sitting at the table to be like, oh, this is the worst. We're just going to be playing this session over and over until we die in real life.
Yes.
We want them to leverage the tropes and understandings they have of time loop type things to instantly get in and start having fun with it. Like, one of the things that immediately popped into my mind is a time loop could be a great way to show new players how role playing is done, because they get to do different stimulus to exactly the same situation and see the different responses that come out of it.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it is one of the few places where you actually get to play this scenario out. I think it doesn't. There are some video games where it works, but in video games we are always kind of bounded by the engine. This is one of the ones where the I'm just gonna like kill everyone and see what happens, for want of a better example, I suppose.
I'm gonna go full murder hobo.
And yeah, really explore the fact that like, oh wow, we really can do anything, but that's no fun if none of it means anything.
It lets you train players in the like, there's an NPC blocking your way. Well, I can kill them. Yeah, okay, great. That's going to have consequences later. And they're like, what's the faster way of getting around this? And it's find the thing that they want and solve that problem for them.
And then eventually you start arriving at that NPC, and it's like, I already have acquired the thing that I hand the guy a hamburger, and he's like, how did you know I wanted one of these? And you just like walk straight through. Like,
Exactly. Right?
that's kind of where we end up.
The mastery that we build here is not through just killing everyone till you get to the end. It's on like every interaction is its own micro puzzle of like, how can I shortcut this? How can I not spend my opportunity cost of time resolving this in the same way? And I think to jump ahead a little bit, that makes any sort of combat in this space very interesting. Because in the movies, you can always montage that away. You run through like the flash sequence of they show up, they do like the things in the very specific sequence of events, and then they get through. But in a role-playing game, like if you choose to murder hobo everyone, you're sucking time up at the table for those like 5 players.
Yeah.
And I think that on the first loops, where that might be like the initial point of call, on later loops, unless you're just hand waving it all away, I think that's a way that players would be like, maybe combat first is not the answer.
Have you turned our fun Groundhog Day episode into radicalizing people against 5e?
No, not necessarily. Just saying that maybe it pushes people more towards an OSR style play where, you know, the mantra is thrown around a lot and is often taken out of context, but combat as a fail state might actually be a better way of approaching things. I think you can design all of these little interactions as puzzles that can be overcome with a quote unquote easy solution if you only knew what it was.
So, okay, let's stop and talk about what actually we're going to be doing at the table. Because I have some like hard questions that I think probably need to be answered so that we can think about what we're going to put in these loops, right? So first of all,
shoot.
Starting from the very highest level, how many loops do you think we need to go through to have a complete time loop experience? How many times do we need to iterate on the loop?
I reckon probably somewhere between 4 and 6.
I think so too. I think less than 4 and we don't feel like we've had the ability to mess around within a loop.
Gain the mastery that is like the good thing.
I think probably more than 8 or 9 and things start to get boring. So I think there's a sweet spot in there around, 5, 6, 7 runs through of the loop.
And I think that also depends on how long a loop is in real playtime.
That's my next question. Thank you for anticipating it. So I think how many loops we go through is more important, right? So how many loops we go through sets the arc of the whole session. It sets the like, too few and we don't feel like we've had the experience, too many and we get bored. So we know we want this kind of sweet spot. And again, we've just pulled this number out of our butts, but it feels right. The sweet spot of like, we want to run through this loop, call it 6 times, right?
Right. Nominally 6.
Nominally 6 times. We can do some maths, some really basic division and say like, okay, well, if you've got a 3-hour session, allowing for some setup and some catharsis at the start and end, that means that your loops can't be any longer realistically than 25 minutes of at the table playtime.
Interesting. So you're trying to squeeze all of this into a single session? Because this is one that I think you can't pull off in a single session. Because just imagining like you've got 25 minutes, half an hour is your limit. Unless all of your players are on board and your resolution mechanics are super tight and snappy, I don't think your players are going to be able to see that much of the world just because of the overheading conversation and deciding what to do.
Look, I think that's true. The flip side is, I think once you start splitting this across multiple sessions, you lose all of the mastery, the familiarity that you've built up. So much of this is going to be living in players' heads at the table. If you come back after a week, 2 weeks, a month and say like, okay, well, we're back in the loop, they're not going to remember, they're not going to have all of that knowledge front and center in their heads.
Absolutely agree.
Between loops.
Okay, here's where I was coming at it from, right? I was thinking maybe 2 loops per game session. So if we say like 3 to 4 hours, then you've got like 90-ish minutes per loop. And I'm expecting to run this for about 3-ish sessions, maybe 4. And that means that I am structuring this game around when can we get together frequently enough that the players aren't forgetting things, and also stressing on them that they need to take notes, because those notes are going to be so crucial as they go through to the next week. I think
Yeah.
this is one where you can't just run it for your normal group unless your normal group already satisfies the criteria to make it work. Otherwise, you end up with this huge mismatch of like, the GM has put in all this work to prep this like quite complex thing, and nobody remembers to give this guy a hamburger, even though they did it last month twice. Come on.
Like, I see what you're getting at.
I don't think this is a game for all players. I think you must be this committed to play this game.
I think there's some serious ludonarrative dissonance in having players flipping through notes to try and remember what happens in each phase, because you cannot. Like, the plot of the films, of the episodes, lives and dies on what you can remember happening. And I think by having players doing that, by having them remember previous loops, remember that, like, oh, that guy's going to fall over, so I'm going to catch him. I think if they're flipping through their notes and trying to win each scenario instead of relying on the only thing that we know does persist between loops, which is memory, like, I think if you have notes and you're not trying to live this as close to the real thing as possible, I think you're missing out on an opportunity to do something that you don't get to do. Like, we don't get to live out a time loop, right? Like, we don't get to do that except in this scenario. And I think by stretching it out and making it non-contiguous, and by allowing like note-taking and persistence between sessions, or even relying on rather than allowing, like, I'm not going to say like no notes at the table, but like by forcing people to rely on note-taking, you miss out on an opportunity to actually live in a time loop. Like, that's this thing that RPGs can do that nothing else can. This is the only way that I can think of for you to actually have that experience of trying to hold a whole sequence of events in your head and navigate it, because you've lived it so many times before. Like, I see what you're getting at. I know that there's
short amount. Your loops are so small.
I know, and I know that you want to just stuff as much in there as possible and build a beautiful, big, complex graph. And I'm like, yes, but you miss out on the chance to have the experience as a player, not as a character, of living in a loop if you do that.
Look, I hear where you're coming from, but I just think like having players at the table decide on a thing could take 10 to 15 minutes. And if your loops are only 25 minutes, how much of that world are they going to be able to fuck with before they find out? Either you're running this as like okay, this is a Twilight Imperium, we're going to spend 8 to 12 hours playing this game and we're going to loop it so much. Or you're splitting it across several play sessions to get the full experience. I just don't see how you can cram that down. Like, I don't think it has to be the biggest complex thing in the world, but I'm imagining something like 4 independent storylines.
Oh my God.
Crisscross at some points. And like,
Jesus Christ, no.
Oh, when I say storylines, I mean like one guy's day. Like, imagine 3 key NPCs, each going about their days doing things, and a like event that is going to occur at a certain point during the day. I think that's enough to spin out some like interesting complexity, and it gives you like 3 significant at the start of the loop. I will go talk to this NPC and see what they're doing. And then at the start of the next loop, I might go see what this one's doing over here. I think that, like, 3 feels like a good number to go through to give the illusion of depth. And then just one independent event that, it's like when the clock strikes 12, the bomb explodes, or the parade comes through this street, or something like that is like wholly unconnected to the other things, but has a causal relationship after that point.
Mm.
All right, come with me on this. You got 3 independent timelines of what these characters are doing. Okay, for the sake of argument, let's give them some names. Johnny is going to the store first, and then he goes to meet up with character B, Sarah, at noon, and then in the afternoon, they're like he's in his house, and she goes to meet with the drug boss,
Mm-hmm.
and then the third character here is the drug boss, doesn't interact with anyone except for Sarah right at the very end of the day. And then the event D is like the parade comes through in the middle of town underneath Johnny's apartment. There's not much actually going on there, but as players, you can interfere with the start of each one of these scenes, and then the rest of the day unfolds differently from there. And
Mm.
that gives you your complexity, that gives you your depth. And I think importantly, there is an assumption that I'm going to lean on when I'm prepping this, and that's that the players are going to be doing the same things when they encounter players, NPCs, in subsequent loops.
How do you mean?
So once they've kind of figured out the solution to a particular thing and they've got like a desirable outcome, instead of trying that again, I'm anticipating that they'll probably want to do the same thing. So let's say Johnny wants a hamburger. At the start, they might try different things to convince Johnny to get on side or like kidnap him or whatever. But once they figure out he wants a hamburger, every subsequent run, they'll get a hamburger and present it to Johnny and effectively skip to the next phase of fiction, the next scene that we've got prepped up.
Mm.
Once you've gone through the loop once, that kind of sets how the situation evolves. And you can draw back on that. So instead of prepping out this like complex tree of cause and effect, you just have the first loop ready to go. You let the players loose on it, and then whatever they do that causes downstream changes, that becomes canon for future callbacks and future loops.
Interesting. So they're kind of writing the default loop, I guess, the first time you run through it. I do like that as a concept.
Structurally, I would be prepping these timelines with like the scenes of where these characters overlap and kind of like what their motivations are and what they're doing, as we normally would for just about any situation. And then when the players interact with it, they're going to change how that timeline would have occurred. And once you've figured that out at the table in the moment, you just write that down and you can call back to that on subsequent loops that when they do these types of activities, these are the outcomes that happen. And the players are then writing the prep for you without you having to make a decision tree.
Yeah, I mean, we do like that.
There's quite a bit of upfront work still. Like, I do think this is probably one of the more prep heavy things that we're planning in Platonics. But the subsequent evolution of all the situations is driven by your players' actions. And if they fall into the behavioral loop of, I know that if I press this button, I'll get this outcome, then you can shortcut that description and say, great, you do that, this happens, we move on. And this also avoids players having to game out the same situations over and over again.
I think that has its advantages.
That's the reward of mastery.
I think the one thing that this maybe doesn't model as well is that overall psychological, emotional arc, right? This is a really, really good model for how do we break out of the loop? How do we solve the run in a way that gets us to the end? And I think that's incredible for your end game, for your like third act. I don't think it quite captures the rest of the things that happen in these media.
Is that only because you're seeing the structure for what it is, though? Imagine you didn't know that's what's going on behind the scenes. What are the players going to do on their first run?
Do they know it's a time loop yet?
Let's say no. Let's say that the players have been conditioned to expect something, but on the first run, they don't know that they're going to time loop.
I mean, okay, so they're going to go about trying to achieve whatever goal it is that they've kind of set themselves for this quest, this mission, right? They're well, we can assume they're goal oriented. They're going to try to get to the goal, and they're going to, let's say, fail.
Yep. Or let's just say they dally too long, they have a nap, right? They get part way and they stop and have a rest.
Take a short rest.
Or somebody dies. Like, I think one that we can do here is maybe all of our characters are tied together in this, and that if anyone dies, the whole loop resets for everyone.
Mm.
Regardless of whichever way you choose it, whatever your reset conditions are. On the first loop, they just go about normal play session. And then they wake up to, we've already prepped our strong frame. And I think this is something like, yeah, I got you, babe. I think a audio cue is really helpful. Or this is one of those rare occasions, I might write some box text.
I was literally also like, you read the same text each time.
Yeah, an exact canned opener for beginning this session. And they like practice your tones of voice and try and do it exactly the same. So they go back, all right? So what are they going to do on loop 2 now? You've given them the subtle clue that this is a time loop because you've given them the exact same opening frame again. Even though wherever they, like, if they died, it's a bit more obvious, but if they just went to sleep, they've woken up in a different place.
I mean, we probably need to play it through to find out, but my guess would be probably another attempt at the goal.
That's really big picture. If we were to zoom in.
Well, okay. Literally, what are they going to do when they wake up? Probably talk about like, hey, didn't we just do this? Yeah. Right? Like, are we just doing this again?
You'll have like, let's say we prep a initial node on this structure that's the same every time, and it simply acts as the trigger for them to A, recognize they're in a time loop, and B, it's their first point of fuck around find out.
Yep.
Really low consequence. It's the what is it in Groundhog Day? He goes down to like the breakfast table, and the lady is talking about something like really inane small town chat.
Yeah, same newspaper is a classic.
Something like that. And then from there, they can choose to explore the area. On the second run, once you do everything exactly the same, I think your players would be like, oh, I think he's doing a time loop episode. I think this is where we're in a time loop. So what do they do then to test if they're in a time loop?
Mess around.
By?
Probably killing some people.
Maybe?
I think
maybe your players are more murder hobo than mine, but I think mine would probably go to the same places that they went the day before to see if things are the same there and if they could do them differently.
Maybe.
And then eventually we get to the end of that run. We start the third loop. Maybe they go again to the same ones, but I would expect at this point they're probably going to try see anything else. I think those first couple of runs, like just thinking about my players and the psychology of how they tend to approach things, I think those first couple runs will probably play out with a high likelihood in a very predictable pattern. And that means that by like runs 3 to 5 is them exploring different opening nodes, different situations or timelines they could get involved in. And then like 5 and 6, maybe they're driving towards trying something. Maybe it extends a little bit further, depending on how successful they are. But at that point, I think we've actually got a pretty good representation of that character growth arc. Noting that we want to avoid the despair phase. I don't think that's conducive to playing at the table.
Yep, I think so too.
I think once our players have got some understanding of the world they're playing in and they can like shortcut areas, the shortcut is the reward here. Skipping the content they've already played is a reward for good play.
So is this something that you would be dropping into an existing campaign? Or is it something that you're playing from the start?
I think you could do... I think dropping into an existing campaign is probably nicer because you've already got the established bonds between the characters and you kind of know what your characters' personalities are like. If you were to do this from scratch with a whole new party, then I think you'd probably end up doing a little bit more, like a few more loops as your players feel out each other's characters at the table. So I think both can be done. I would probably prefer to do this in an ongoing campaign, or one where the characters are all familiar to each other. Certainly the players are more familiar to each other.
Yeah. I think we've actually got two scenarios here. I think what you've kind of mapped out is probably a better fit for it's an arc in a campaign, right? It's a time loop block of sessions, an adventure, really, is what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a time loop adventure in an existing campaign. In our media, I think what you're looking at is a time loop episode of an ongoing series. It's window of opportunity.
Yep.
Right? I think we almost have two subgenres here. And I think quite interestingly, we've both narrowed in on different ones. Because the thing I have been thinking about is like, how do we do a Groundhog Day? How do we do a Palm Springs? How do we do something like that? Where these movies manage to get through the whole time loop arc in 90 minutes while also establishing characters and that kind of stuff.
They do, but it's a passive medium.
Sure. So
as soon as you interject, imagine someone pauses the screen every time like a significant decision happens and you have to talk it over with your group. That 90 minutes becomes several days.
I mean, I can respond to this with like a get more decisive players, but like maybe this is an exercise in training players to be decisive, to use a Jords aphorism.
Like I genuinely think it might be. Like if they're not decisive at the start, like okay, imagine you sat down to do this as a movie style one with a group of new players who don't know each other.
Let me tell you how I would run this.
Sure.
So I'm running this in, I think system does matter here because you absolutely don't want to get bogged down in anything. I'm running this in something super lightweight, something lasers and feelingsy, something recessy, something like one roll resolves the whole situation type thing. We, rather than having a more complex like web of connections, I think what I'm prepping is a sequence of scenes, and those scenes have starting conditions, box text, if you will, and each run through, we run through those scenes, not necessarily run through them in order like we have to do them every time, but that sequence of scenes will progress in the same way every time. And if the players like drive off to New Mexico, like whatever, but there's in my head not a lot of like concurrency. There aren't like threads off to the side that weave out and back in again. There is like one sequence of events to kind of keep track of, right? Something that you can hold in your head as a player. Like this happens, then this happens, then this happens. There's a couple of details that you can, your affordances to mess with each scene. We know a couple of things happen in each scene, and then there's some links from one scene to the next about, you know, if you kill someone in a previous scene or drag someone off and hide them behind the bushes or whatever in a previous scene, like, of course they're not going to appear in the next scene, but it's like, it's a relatively straightforward set of things to keep track of. We run through these one after the other and essentially run through a whole loop in, I'm expecting like 5-minute scenes, right? Like,
are you imagining your decision space here is like the way that they can affect the outcome of these scenes is quite bounded? So it's like, imagine like the smallest thing would be binary decision.
It's not bounded at all. It's almost the opposite. It's like, I'm going to give you the same 6 improv prompts over and over again, and we're going to see where you take it. Right? Like it's way open. And because it's short, it's more or less sequential, it becomes something that you can then run through feasibly 5 times in one evening of play without it getting boring. So in my head, they're like, each scene is kind of an index card and we're just like,
Mm-hmm.
bang, this scene. Here are the things that we know are present in the scene. Here is like kind of what we've learned so far. We can add to the cards as we go. And we just like play them out. It's almost like playing through a season of something like A Quiet Year, with specifically with respect to the Oracle deck, right? It's like playing through the same Oracle 5 times. So you know what the Oracle is going to bring up. You know what each situation is going to be. And what you get to mess around with each time is how do we respond to that? So the first couple of times you try to play it straight, then we get into our like, let's mess things up and see what happens phase of the story. And then we move on by the end to, all right, let's go for the solve. Let's go for the escape. Probably after some kind of kick that interrupts that, which is like, oh, we don't get to keep doing this forever, or like there's someone else in the loop with you, or something like that, that like precipitates action, bumps them out of the like screwing around and finding out phase. We have 1 to 2 more loops to try and resolve this. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And so it becomes less, and I think this is the distinction that I was trying to get at the start. It becomes less about, or let's put these characters that we already know through a time loop and kind of do that character-y stuff that we see happening in the shows, right? Like beautiful vessel for moments like playing golf through the Stargate. Great character development, really cool to let people do things with no consequences, but they remember it. Very TV show. I think this is much more, hey, I want to have a time loop experience. I'm not interested in seeing how these characters that I know or this world that I'm familiar with behaves in a time loop. I just want to ride the time loop ride one time. And I think that is a kind of thing that you could work through super, really tight, really snappy, very improv-y set of prompts, play them out one at a time, or set of oracles, play them out one at a time. And actually, I genuinely think you can fit it satisfyingly into one session.
All right, I got some questions that I want to probe here.
Yep.
If we zoom in, these index cards that have got your scenes on them.
Yep.
There's a single sequence of like canon events that would occur. So like I'm imagining the baseline here is if the players never showed up, this is what would happen.
If the players never show up, I would just read the first card, put it down. Read the second card, put it down. Exactly. Read the third card, put it down. The end.
Yep. That's the canonical timeline without intervention.
Yep.
If your players do something wildly divergent in the first scene, how does it always lead to the second?
How do you mean?
So the follow-on scene to that, how can that accept as inputs all those different outcomes that could have occurred and still be logically coherent? Because I think in this chain, this feels like actually quite strongly butterfly effect. How does scene 4 still accept as inputs the 3 previous scenes worth of potential divergence?
I love the way your brain works and how it's sometimes so different from the way that my brain works. I don't know, Jords, I would just make it up.
But at which point, like, scene 4 might be irrelevant to the content that's actually happening.
Yeah, maybe.
So the structure doesn't support it.
I mean, we still advance through the scenes.
Unless you're trying to get the players to converge to those scenes.
I think that is part of this, like, I think that only happens in the explory phase, the divergent phase. It's like, I plop the card down, I'm like, well, none of these things have happened because you've killed everyone who would be doing them. And we just like, we continue to play, but I don't need the things that are happening on the card to necessarily, like, we know we have a hard end for the loop, which is that they die or fall asleep or it hits a certain time. Probably I reach the end of the Oracle deck and something happens every time the Frost Shepherds arrive and it's the end.
The event that resets, yep.
So like, I know I only have a certain number of scenes to get through. And like, if the quote unquote canon thing is that the canon of the timeline is so messed up that the prompt on the card no longer makes sense, then like, great, we're off the map and we're just riffing. Like that doesn't bother me because we will come back to that set of like opportunities on the next loop as we start to do the part of the story where we try to solve our way out of it. Just make it up, man. Just riff.
Yeah, but at that point, why are you prepping?
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a colossal amount of prep, but I think having something there to not happen, the negative space of the events that didn't happen because you messed them up, like, I think it's important to have that there and be like, yeah, none of the things that normally happen at this point in the narrative have happened because you've goofed them up, right? Like the best man is not giving a speech because you've killed him. Also, like the wedding ceremony that's supposed to happen is not happening because you've killed the bride and the groom. We've like got to get less murdery, but I think we can talk about things that aren't happening and then very quickly move that past that into what is happening instead. But in my head, this is extremely fast and loose.
All right. If I try to put this into my world, right? Each one of these scenes has like a couple of different toggles that could be like on or off. Imagine it's like characters are present or not, or
Like I guess,
precursor
yeah.
event has occurred or not. So that as you're progressing through from scene 1 to scene 2, you look at those elements that should be continued on and then be like, what's different and how would this have played out?
Sure.
Oh, it just feels like it'd go off the rails so quickly.
Yeah, that's the joy of it.
Yeah. In which case, like, now you're narrating the story of them taking meth and going to Guatemala.
Sure.
And that does...
Once or twice.
Yeah.
Like, and then they realize that they like, this is what I'm saying. This is an authentic experience. They're like,
it feels like there's a lot of cognitive overhead in this as you like constantly just have to riff.
I don't know that there's that much more cognitive overhead than the way I normally game master. Like,
no, I'm feeling some solid friction here. Yeah. I don't think this approach would work for me at all.
You don't just sit down at the table and make things up?
I do, but I like to draw from like a pool of available options. And this one feels like that works at the first scene, but then when players do chicanery, I would have less interesting things to pull from making it up in the spot as we go along than if I had done a little bit of work in advance.
Yeah, look, this could be a preference thing. I genuinely think it is a genre difference, right? I think what you've described is an episode of a show, and I think what I've described is a movie, and we are sitting down to play a slightly silly movie like Edge of Tomorrow or Palm Springs or Groundhog Day, and you're sitting down to have an interesting like experience in a world that you know well, that has lots of affordances that you can pick up and work with, and has characters with affordances that you know well, and characters that you want to see developed like an episode of a TV show. I think that's exactly what we're seeing, and I think they're both valid ways to do a time loop.
But I don't like your way.
Look, I think your way sounds like it would be a lot of fun for you to prep, and a lot of work that I would not bother doing at the table to keep track of all of the variations.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't do this for a single 3-hour session, but I also don't think there's like, in my way, I don't think there's a lot of variables to keep track of, right? I think here's my like from the ground up scenario. I would decide on like, first of all, my initial big opening frame and my mechanism for a loop reset, and the mechanism or the conditions which break the loop. I think those are the 3 big fixed points in time. Then I'd get into, I would prep my like 3-ish storylines of events that are happening, which are just like at time X, person is in location Y type things. And if there's like specific encounters that I want to happen there, like a quick narration of what would happen and the way that that could be like shortcut, I think of this as like every NPC would do something for you if only you had leverage over them. There are some games that codify this really nicely. I don't think it particularly matters. I think you can slap this into just about any game, but this is the like identifying that this person's really hungry and you could bring them a hamburger. The thing that matters here is that you bring them food. It doesn't matter what type of food. It's not like there's a specific key for every lock, but there is like a category of answer that you could do. In the same way, it's like this kid's going to get hit by the bus unless somebody intervenes. And the answer there could be like stop the bus, or it could be get the kid out of the way, like or any number of solutions along that spectrum. But you end up with the same kind of the scene has been resolved in a different way. So not a lot of variables to keep track of here, but the key thing that the players are doing here, learning their mastery of the world, is like, if I arrive at this place with this item, or if I tell this person this knowledge that I've retained from the previous one, that would allow me to navigate the situation more easily and then progress deeper into the evolving storyline. And anytime your players do like a canonically good action, you just record that down and you can montage that in the next run so you don't have to play through the same content again. And their reward is that they go faster, get deeper into the loop, and get to explore more. But those first couple of loops, I'm expecting to be quite broad and divergent as they kind of like find all of the things that are happening and identify what the storylines that are going on are. And then the subsequent loops is them manipulating those storylines as they try to put all of the things in the right places and get the people in the right locations such that they can then get to the big finale and resolve the loop. So in this structure, I don't think there's actually a lot to keep track of. And we're expecting to play through it 6-ish times, which means that the prep work is not going to go unwasted because I can reasonably expect that players are gonna fiddle with all of the levers at every stage of it.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be playing this for, a 90-ish minute loop 6 times over, I'm getting good bang for my buck. And it gives me a robust structure to fall on when they go totally off the rails. Because I've got my NPCs' motivations and their locations at points in time, which make it really easy to just say, pulling all of these elements together, the scene that you're in would probably look something like this.
Yeah. Look, I stand by my assessment. I think you have a TV episode and I have a movie.
I feel like yours is a bit more rest of the fucking owl for me. But to each their own.
No, it's just a different kind of experience. It's a frenetic, like one-shotty, like chaosy kind of improv story game type experience. It's recreational improv, and like they are different points on whatever kind of spectrum you want to draw for role-playing games, and I don't think that makes one of them better or worse than the other. I think it's a preference thing. I do think yours sounds really cool in the sense that it is like a little bit of wish fulfillment for players, because I think we've all kind of had that scenario where it's like, man, I wish we could run that dungeon again knowing where everything is. Like, absolutely, that's what you're doing. Yeah. It could essentially be a dungeon. And it's like, okay, you could start with a dungeon with a sufficiently non-linear dungeon and just construct the dungeon.
I think of it more of like a temporal point crawl.
Yeah, it is. You construct the dungeon such that, but I'm saying dungeon specifically because I think it could literally be a dungeon, and then there's something at the bottom of the dungeon that is causing you to reset to the top of the dungeon, and you run it over and over again, learning a little bit each time, understanding what goes on. Like, yeah, I think that works. I think that's a TV show time loop where you have established characters and the point is not catharsis. The point is solving a puzzle.
Yes, very much so.
Right? The point is not to have some philosophical insights about the nature of despair. The point is like, well, we know that we're going to get out of this because we know there's going to be an episode next week. So like, how are we going to solve this in like an interesting and novel way? Like it's the time loop as a puzzle versus the time loop as a like philosophical experience. And I think they're both I think they're both subgenres of the time loop medium. I think yours slaps. I would play in it. I would never prep it because it's too much work.
Oh, see,
Mine
look, I actually,
mine will be 5 index cards with dot points, and I'll just slap them down on the table over and over again and be like, all right, now this happens again.
I just still don't, I
And
can't
for a
rationalize in
certain,
my brain how you can't slap down 4 and 5 because things are so different. And if it ties back to your canonical timeline, if the players don't intervene, then why are they there? I can't make these square pegs fit in my smooth brain.
so there's an interesting, maybe by way of explanation about kind of where my head is at. There's an interesting thing. I played Brass, the board game,
Oh, yeah,
which
I've seen it on the shelf, but never played it.
which has as its action economy, like there's a deck of cards, and every time you want to do something as part of your turn, you take or you have to spend a card, right? At the start of the game, you're like, oh, whatever. Blah. By the end of the game, you're like, I've only got 4 cards left, which means there's 4 actions left that I can take in the whole game. And also what's on the card affects what kind of action I can take. And I'm kind of thinking about this the same way, right? We know that 6 scenes are going to play out before we reset. We know that the content of the scenes might be more or less different each time in a way that it is the game master's job to keep track of. We know that we might learn more about the scenes as we go on. I would foresee leaving some blank space on the cards so that we can be like, oh, as we've explored, we've learned that like actually over in the side room, like these 2 characters are, you know, having a secret deal, and we pop that on the card, and we now know that is happening every time. But it's like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scenes to like play out this story, and then it will reset. Like you can drive off to the next state, but like we've got 1 scene to do it in. So like that kind of is acting as a limitation, that the scenes, that the canonical timeline, whether or not the events happen, is acting less like a sequence of cause and effect and more like an action economy, right? 6 things happen in this story.
Imagining that your players do just choose to see where the edge of the world is.
Yeah.
You just narrate that as like a single scene, and you drive off into the sunset. Eventually you all go to bed, reset.
Yeah. Not necessarily eventually you all go to bed. Like maybe there are things that you want to do out there in the world to progress the plot. Maybe you want to track down an expert in quantum physics and talk to them. Like try one, but there's a set number of things that you can do before you hit reset. And that's really where our cards come in. Like I'm going to be slapping the cards down anyway, and it will be like, well, meanwhile, back where you had started before you drove away, or like canonically this would be happening about now, but obviously none of that is happening. But this is where we're at in the loop. You have 1 scene left. So it becomes less of a cause and effect thing and more of a pacing thing.
How is your loop resolved? How do they break the loop?
I mean, it can be whatever, I think.
I know. I think it can't be whatever, because like there are discrete things like kill the bad guy or deactivate the device or something like that, and there's the like the movie style ones of become a good person, which has like a much greater amount of interpretation around it. That's not quite so like break the loop off. Are you just going to play it through 6 times and then whatever they did on the last one is how the loop is broken? Because that, I think, doesn't bring me that catharsis then.
No, but I think there is something that happens probably around loop 3 or loop 4 that kicks them out of messing around and back into trying to escape.
But like, take it from there to go to what? Because like we said way back at the start, like there is a condition for breaking the loop. I think that is something that does have to be set.
Sure.
So like, what would it be? What break of the loop fits this type of structure well?
That's just going to depend on what type of story you're telling. Like if it's fantasy, it's a spell that needs to be broken. If it's
So it's a discrete event. Because I think that this is the kind of category that I'm working towards here. Either it's like a discrete thing that can be resolved, or it's the self-actualization, which is not a discrete moment in time. And
I mean, most of the time they're linked, right? Like the only movie where it is literally like, and then the loop breaks for no reason is Groundhog Day. But like Palm Springs, it's like they are able to escape the loop. Yes, because they've discovered how it works and what physical actions are required to break it, but also they have decided that it is time to live their life with consequences again, right? Like that the two are kind of interlinked. But yes, I would imagine there would be a specific thing you would have to do to break the loop. And so the latter half of the session, following some kind of kick, pivots towards, all right, what is the solve? What is the thing that we have to do to get out of this loop now that we've decided that we want to do it?
okay, so I think we've got quite different approaches to how we'd resolve this one here. Mine obviously needs a bit more work and a more prepared structure in advance. There's less freewheeling in mine.
Yep.
Yours is much more loose and impromptu to slap down.
Yes.
But you've still got your anchor points that you're bringing people back to.
Mm-hmm.
You already had some thoughts about this, but what system would you run yours in then?
Probably the fastest thing possible because we got to crank through dem loops. I think it is something like a Lasers and Feelings, like a 2-stat RPG. Maybe my favorite. I just need a resolution mechanic. Rhesus, which is a 6-page RPG where you are ranked in cliches and you roll that many dice, and that's kind of the mechanics.
Sounds like maybe it's like just Agon by John Harper could work as well. Like that's a whole situation is resolved with a single roll.
Yep.
And can navigate maybe tensions between players as well if you're looking for that decisiveness. In this one, you're a bunch of Greek heroes and you're resolving these big challenges, and everybody will roll on it, and the best roll kind of like takes all the glory. So you could kind of use that as like a decision-making apparatus if you wanted to really punch through things.
Yeah, I think that would be a good fit. As little as possible.
As little as possible to get in the way.
Yeah. What are you thinking? Whatever your current campaign is running in, right?
Really broad, yeah. I think this is quite agnostic a structure. Any sort of traditional game, any trad game, neo-trad game, I think would work well. The things that I'd want to avoid are like really time-consuming resolution mechanics, or things like very bogged down combat. Like,
yeah.
I would want to treat if I'm prepping this so that combat are potential nodes on my timeline, I want something that's going to resolve it quickly and something that could bypass combat entirely while achieving the same outcome. So I think like the first thought that jumped into my mind is something that's really OSR-y, where combat is fast, really easily resolved, and like if you had the right things to put in place, you could just narrate an outcome.
It doesn't matter that it tends to be quite lethal because you're in a time
Exactly. Loop. It plays into that really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very strong learning for players to be like, we just roll in with our swords out, and then you die, and then you get to read out your box text and reset them again. So I was thinking something like a Knave or an Into the Odd or any number of OSR style games could fit this really well. But I think you can still run this in meatier epic fantasy games as well.
So,
which leads to, would I run this in 5e? As a personal preference, no. Could I? Yes, I think I could. I would want to focus, though, on making sure that the amount of time to resolve something mechanically in combat doesn't go on for so long that people actually forget the bits of the loop they're up to. I think there is like a certain amount of load that you can hold on to with that, and introducing the noise of big resolutions would decrease the fun of people
Yeah,
building that
I think
mastery
it's
of the loop.
certainly one to pull out all of those tricks for running 5e combat more quickly.
So yeah, could be done. Probably still wouldn't, but could be.
Look, I feel like a lot of people would and will and probably have. But I think you're right. I think the OSR sort of deadliness and the shape of like a dungeon crawl where it's like, okay, we're gonna roguelike style attempt this same dungeon over and over again. Like, I think that has legs, and I think that is probably most people's choice in how to have this kind of experience. I fully acknowledge that the thing that I am describing is an off the wall weirdo theater kid experience, not a trad game in any sense.
All right. So, would you run this?
Yeah, I think I would.
Would you run it my way?
No, but I'd play in yours.
Yeah, I think I absolutely would run this. I think this could be a really fun, like mini campaign to run as well.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why I would be averse to it.
But would you run it my way?
No, absolutely not. All right, we got a strong call to action here, team. If you've been listening to this and you have strong feelings down path A or path B in this time loop, come back to our Discord and chat with Rocky and me and tell us which one you would prefer.
Here's what you need to do. Design a time loop game, run it, and then go back in time, design it differently. Oh boy.
Imagine if you're in the loop 10,000 times and you come out of it and you're like, I've designed like 500 games and play tested them all.
But I haven't written any of them down. They're all just in my head, man.
That's all I can do. Every day I wake up and I start writing rule sets out to share with other players.
Oh boy.
Well, that's it. Until the next time we loop through and record this episode differently, that's time loops.
This has been an episode of Playtonics. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, but you already know that because you're listening to the podcast. We're online at playtonics.net, where you can find old episodes and show notes and sign up for our newsletter. You can find us on the text-based social media, Blue Sky, Mastodon, and Threads, which is mostly me posting about whatever dumb thing I've had to watch this month. And you can also find us on Reddit, where Jords has actually thoughtful opinions about role-playing games, and he posts them to r/RPG where they're immediately downvoted, because that's how Reddit be.
100% of the time, yes.
So keep an eye out for us on the internet. Really, the biggest thing you can do, though, is, well, there's two things. One is to send this episode to a friend, maybe two friends who you think will run time loops very differently. And the other one is to jump on our Discord and tell us which one of us was right. There you go. There's some engagement bait for you. Who is right? Is it neither of us? Are we both just loopy? Sorry.
Hi, welcome to Playtonics. I'm Jords.
I'm Rocky, and this is the show where... No, we've definitely already done this.
No, I feel... Yeah, this is deja vu.